Hello and welcome to the ESHA Port Overview webinar. My name is Ben Miller and I'll be conducting this webinar for you guys today. Our agenda for today is to take kind of a quick overview of ESHA Port. ESHA Port is a workflow utility for exporting and importing data with ESHA Research programs, works with both the food processor and the Genesis programs. During this 30-minute webinar, we will cover using ESHA Port to import and export data, filtering data, formatting options. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, depending on how much time we have left over. A little info about ESHA Research. ESHA was established in 1981 with the goal of providing a comprehensive nutrition database with few missing values. Our solutions include nutrition and diet analysis, restaurant menu analysis and labeling, food formulation and labeling, supplement formulation and labeling, and we also have our consulting services to create labels for you. We have a few upcoming webinars. We have preparing for an FDA nutrition label audit on May 24th. I'll cover using Genesis for best practices to achieve compliance for your labeling. Topics like audit trails, tracking changes, recipe preparation documentation, and a lot more. We also on June 14th have a restaurant menu labeling using the food menu report in Genesis webinar, and I'll go over using the food menu report to be compliant with your restaurant menu labeling. We have a few training sessions as well coming up for Genesis. We have an advanced Genesis workshop April 28th and 29th in Chicago. We also have a professional training or an entry-level training July 14th and 15th in Chicago as well. The advanced workshop is a little more of an advanced usage, whereas professional is more of an entry level to Genesis. If you'd like to sign up for either of those, you can contact Carla Hadsel by phone or by emailing training@esha.com. Let me get over to ESHA Port now here. Come on. All right, when we open up ESHA Port, this will be the first thing we see. We can create a new export, a new import, open an existing import or export, or obviously exit the application as well. We'll start with a new export. We do have a couple other options that we can look at as well up in our ribbon area. If you click on the About window, which I'm not going to, the About will show what server and database you are connected to, and it'll show you your serial code and customer number. I'm not going to show it because my customer number and serial code would show as well. And then over here in this little question mark, we have our help documentation. Take a quick look at that. It just shows a little bit of documentation about ESHA Port. We'll go over a lot of that, but if you ever need any help, you can take a look at that. All right, and creating a new export. The first thing that we will want to choose is the location in which we are exporting. So you'll choose your text file that you are exporting to. The folder in which you are exporting does have to already exist, but the text file does not. So if we click on Browse, just take a look at my desktop and just do test as our file name. Notice that file does not exist already, but it will create that during the export process. The export is always going to be in a delimited text format. CSV is also a common name for that. CSV is just comma separated. The default for ESHA Port is tab separated, but you can change that in the format options. The next location we have down here is our error log file name. And hopefully we never have to use that, but just in case there are any errors during your export or import, they will all export into a text file, and you'll be able to see those in the interface of the application as well. The default will always go into your documents. We get to kind of the more important stuff here. You have your document type, what information you're wanting to export from the database. You can choose to export your ingredients, recipes, if you have the food processor person, or if you have Genesis, the food menu. These will show up no matter which application you have, food processor or Genesis. But if you don't have the application that works with that item type, it just won't be able to do anything, won't export anything. And once we select an item, we'll get a few more options down below in our export. Ingredients won't get additional export operations because there's only one option to export. You just have to export the nutrients for those ingredients. Recipes, you can choose to either export the analysis, which is going to be your unrounded values per serving. You can also export the label rounded analysis, which will give us a few more options. Label rounded analysis is going to show the label rounded nutrients, as well as give us an option to export the nutrition fact panel as an image into the folder that we specify in this export folder location here. And we can also choose what file type we want the nutrition fact panel to be: bitmap, GIF, TIFF, or PNG. And you can also give the file a suffix if you want to add the user code or the primary key to the name of the nutrition fact panel. And then we also have the option to include the ingredients. If you choose the ingredients, what the export will choose to do is we'll export each line as the recipe name, the ingredient name, and then the fields that we choose to export. And those first two are optional as well. For this, we will choose an analysis. And once we have selected the document type that we want to export, we can go to our selected fields. By default, it's only going to show a couple. It'll show the name of the recipe and the primary key, which is a random number generated by the application for every ingredient and recipe. Let's go ahead and kick that out. We don't need that. So for this export, we'll go ahead and just use a couple of different fields here. We'll go ahead and do the name. We'll do the serving quantity and measure, which will export us the amount of the serving that the recipe has. So if this was a 100-gram serving, it would be 100, and the measure would be grams. And in our drop-down list here, we have a few different options for the different fields we can select. Nutrients will give us all 163 nutrients in the database, plus if you've created any custom created nutrients, you can add those as well. We'll just put in calories here. And you can also export the allergens for the recipe. I've added a couple additional allergens that aren't normally in the database, but by default you'll just see the allergens that are included with the application, or any user created allergens as well. Once we have what we selected, go ahead and hit OK. And the next area is going to be our selection criteria. This will select what recipes we would like to export or what ingredients we'd like to export. The default will just select all records in your database. So if we go ahead and click the test button here, I think I have about 106 recipes in my database as a whole. I've imported one of our kind of base databases available on our website. If we'd like to select something a little bit different, we have a select by key file, which has more information in our help documentation. I'm not going to go through the key file right now. You can also select by multiple criteria. You can select by the name of the recipe or ingredient, the creation date or modified date, or the database groups that the item is located in. You can also select either by multiple groups that the item is in using the AND function. So if you select two groups, the recipe has to be in both of those groups to be included in the export. Or you can include the any group or the OR selection, which will be if you select two groups, any recipe that's in either one of those groups will be exported. So we go ahead and just I'll search for sample because that's something everyone will have. If we decide to select by multiple criteria and name it our sample and test, we'll get our sample fruit salad and peas that are always in the database. And that's what we'll go ahead and export right now. And our last option is the format options. Just a few different things that you can change. You can choose the number of decimal places that your nutrients show. The default is 2. You can change the field separator. I mentioned it's a tab delimited text file. You can change that to comma if you'd like, or any of the other options that are here. But tab and comma are the two most commonly used. You can enter in a text delimiter, so it would surround to any text with any of these delimiters if you want to do a single quote or a double quote. The checkbox here, by default you will not see, if we go back to our selected fields, by default you will not see the fields in your exported text document. If we go ahead and check this field, we will then have the first line of the export be the selected fields. And we also have our write mode. By default, the export will overwrite anything in the text document and just start it over. If you choose to append, then any data that's already in the text document will still exist, and it will just start writing at the end of the existing document and continue from there. We'll choose overwrite. And this is just basically creating the skeleton of the export. When we hit OK, it'll then create that and we'll be ready to export. From here we have a few different options. We can take a look at the different fields that we already selected. We can't change any here. If you wanted to change any, you'd have to go in and click Edit to change them. You can take a look at the documents that are being exported. When we take a look at the export file, it'll actually show us the contents of the text file that we have selected here. Nothing is in it right now, so it's not going to show anything. And also show our error log. It says no such file or directory exists, which means that the text document just doesn't exist yet. When we hit export, it will create it though. Go ahead and just hit create now, or export now. And we'll see export completed successfully, so we have exported our data. We also have the option of saving the export as a .epf file. This is a specific ESHA Port file for choosing to export again later. If you wanted all of this exact same criteria, the same fields, the same document type, the same location, you can just choose save. I'll go ahead and put it in my folder that I already had. Let me go ahead and hit save. And we'll now close our export. And if we go back into open, I'm defaulting back to the same folder, but if we choose that webinar export again and double click on it, we'll open us back up with the same fields as I mentioned. All of the same settings are saved. And we'll move over to a new import. New imports are going to be very similar to exports. You'll see a lot of the same functionality and the same options here. Obviously the first thing, as I mentioned before, is to select a import file name, which is a lot more important than an export file name, because you'll have to select the text file that already exists to import in. I set one up already for this webinar, so we've got I'm going to go ahead and import a recipe called PBJ. It's going to create a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If we go ahead and open up our text file, maximize that, we see we have all of our different fields at the top here. So recipe name, ingredient name, quantity, measure, ESHA code, user code, serving size quantity, and serving size measure. And then we have our 3 ingredients for our PB&J sandwich. All right, so let's go ahead and back into ESHA Port. Again, choosing your document type will give you a few different options. With importing, you have the option of either updating existing items that exist in the database or creating new. If this is an item that doesn't yet exist in your database, the functions don't really do anything differently, but if the item does already exist in your database, if you choose update, it will take the existing recipes or ingredients and update them with new information. If you choose create, it will delete the existing information first and then create it brand new. So you're not adding in, you're not going to keep the same audit trails or anything else. It will be all brand new. And if you are importing to match an existing item, you do have a few options down here as well. You can either choose to replace the item automatically, as I mentioned. If you choose the next option down, it will automatically leave the database items unchanged. If you're importing 100 different ingredients and 3 exist, you can have it skip those 3 automatically. You also have the option to use the most recent of the 2 items. If you don't specify a creation date in your text file, then the creation date of the item imported will be right now. So it's being created right now. So it will automatically import over the top. Or you can ask it to prompt you each time if you'd like to save the existing or to overwrite for a new one. Selected fields are going to be exactly the same as an export. So I'll go ahead and skip that for right now because I'm just going to use the existing EPF file that I created for this webinar. So I'm not going to set up my fields for this right now. And then again, your format options, these again are a little bit more important for an import than an export. You want to make sure that your field separator is set to how your text document is actually set up. Same with the text delimiter. And then the ignore first row of the file. If you have the first row showing the fields, but you don't check that, then you will import a new item with the fields as the name of the field. So you can create a brand new ingredient named ingredient on accident if you don't check that off, if it is in your text document. And when we hit OK, we'll head right into that same field that we saw for exports. I am not going to save this. I'm going to go ahead and close. Not save. What we'll want to do is, what I'm going to go ahead and do is open. I'm going to open my import recipe PB&J. And as we see, if we go ahead and hit edit, it's pointing to my text document that we saw a couple minutes ago, our import recipe PB&J. And it's going to create this recipe, which doesn't exist in my database yet. And we're always going to replace. We've got our fields set up that are the same as in my text document. And the text delimiter is set to double quote. And I am separating with tabs. Let's go ahead and hit OK. If we look at the import file, it should now show us kind of a breakdown of what's going to happen. So we look at the name, which will be the name of the recipe as PB&J. Item name is going to be the different ingredients. I set it up as each item's ESHA code, so I looked up the specific ESHA codes for these ingredients and put them in so that it will actually find data. If you import an item name for an ingredient that does not exist in the database, then you'll import as a no data item. It'll show up in red and it'll say that there's no data for that ingredient. So it's an important piece of that, is either getting the name exactly right or getting the item ESHA code to match an existing ESHA code that you want to use. And we'll go ahead and import. And we say our import completed successfully. Let's go ahead and take a look at Genesis and see what we got. Open a recipe, search for PB&J. So we've got our new ingredient that was created, modified today, with our peanut butter, jelly, and bread in it. So our import was successful. Not save that. Changed it a little bit, but I don't think I changed anything at all actually. When saving import and export files as a EPF, we see our EPF here. There are ways to also call those from a command line. I'm not going to write up a command line here because there's a pretty good chance that I mess some things up. So we'll open up our command line calls. We do have a few command line calls in the help documentation. Our command line calls can also be scheduled using Windows Scheduler, or if you have another scheduling software. If you would like some assistance setting up a command line call or a scheduled call, you can talk to our support department by either emailing support@esha.com or getting into chat@help.esha.com. One thing I kind of skipped over on the export. Go ahead and open up my export again. When we do export, the data is not going to be incredibly easy to read. I'll open up that export that I just did, so that test.txt file. And it's kind of hard to tell where one field starts and where the other begins. So it's not quite as pretty as, say, looking at it in Excel. You can open these files in Excel, though. Excel can read a delimited text document. So if we open up Excel here, and we choose to browse, let's take a look at our test document. When we hit open, it'll ask us to use the import wizard to change it. So we just hit next a couple of times. It should automatically find the delimiters. If the delimiters are different, you can just check the correct one in the boxes here. And we hit finish, and we'll open up our spreadsheet. Make it a lot easier to read than trying to read that text document. All right, I think I'm going to jump over to a few questions now. If you do have any questions that we don't get to, we will follow up individually with you later, and this webinar will also be recorded. We'll send out a recording of that later today. All right, so just a couple of questions now. Pull that back open all the way. Oops. First question, can we import Excel files into Genesis and then assign raw material codes that already exist in the database of raw materials within Genesis? Yes, we went over that a little bit. Let me get back over into ESHA Port and create a new import. When you do import recipes, you choose Recipe and Create. In the selected fields, you have an option for items, and that will be the ingredients in the recipe. So you have to either give it a name, a ESHA code, item ESHA code, item name, or an item user code. If you specify those that already exist within your database, we'll import that recipe with the ingredients that you have. And your text document will probably look a little bit, open back up my import recipe PB&J, a little bit like this. Let me open it in. Let me open in Excel so it's a little bit easier to see. I'll open house. So when we import, you'll see your recipe name will be need to be in each column. And then you'll want to give the ingredient name in the next column, how much of the ingredient you're using, and then either the ESHA code or the user code, and then the serving size as well, so the serving quantity and serving measure. Our next question is, does the export feature within Food Processor or Genesis replace the ESHA Port utility? It does not. The export and import feature, so we look at export here, will export individual items. You can either export the analysis, which will give you a text document, but in a little bit of a different setup than ESHA Port will. Or you can export the recipe, which will export in a EXL format, which is a file format that's only readable by Genesis or the food processor, or as an ingredient, which will export a recipe as an ingredient in, again, the EXL format. You can also export any of the reports within Genesis or food processor, but not in bulk. So ESHA Port is the only way to export data from the database in bulk. All right, next question, does ESHA Port allow you to export recipes and the ingredients contained in those recipes along with the corresponding nutrients per ingredient / recipe totals? Yes. So we take a look at ESHA Port again. We went over this a little bit. Here's a question that was asked before we started. I'll do a new export now. If we do a recipe, if we choose the ingredient export operation for recipes, then within the exported fields, we can either export the recipe-specific items or the field specific to the ingredient. Or you can also select the nutrients. These will be the nutrients for the specific ingredients, not for the recipe as a whole. Or the allergens of either the individual ingredients, as we see item allergen, or of the recipe total allergens. If you wanted recipe full nutrients, so the whole serving size, plus items, you'd have to do 2 separate exports. You have to export, we have to do an export of the analysis to get the serving size nutrients for the recipe, and then you do a separate export of the ingredients to include the ingredient information. We got another question, is there an API that a system can call? We do have a Genesis API that's available. It works, the overall export is a little similar to ESHA Port. You can get the same data out. You can also export the nutrition fact panel as an image using the API. If you'd like more information about the API, you can contact our sales department or our technical support department. All right, one last question. Is there a way to export data in certain amounts, such as 100 grams? Ingredients are exported as they are saved. So if you create an ingredient for 50 grams, it will export that amount. Recipes will be exported per serving only. So there's not a way to specify the serving size or the amount size in ESHA Port. There is in the API. You can specify the amount in the API, but not in ESHA Port. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We will follow up with any questions we didn't get to individually, and we will post some of those on our website as well. And we'll also send you out a link for the recorded version of this webinar if you need to watch at a later date. Thank you.